We're ready to go.
You're on.
We're set up. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Off the Lip radio show. And I've been blessed to been invited, actually invited myself.
Of course you did.
I invited myself. Oh, thanks for the aqua. Down here with my good friend and true legend. Not too many people are called legends, but this gentleman, as far as I'm concerned, is a true legend. And he is. Huh? What do you think?
I'm going to be getting one of those shirts, so I'll be a
You're
legend.
getting one of the shirts. You're getting the shirts. My dear friend, Mr. Chris Bertish. Now, Chris Bertish is in a short little take. Is the 2009.
10.
No, it was 9.
10.
Was it 10? Was it 9 or 10? Was it both?
Definitely 10.
2010 Mavericks champion. And who in 2017, even in spite of the fact I called him and said, what the hell do you think you're doing? Before he went on this journey, and he didn't pay attention to what I said, and he actually did a solo, unassisted crossing of the Atlantic Ocean. In spite of me telling you...
On what?
What? On a paddleboard.
Oh, that detail.
That detail. Are you going to have the microphone down there, or are you going to hold it up to your mouth?
There's no one of those
Well, you know, we're not Guy Kawasaki and got the whole thing, you know.
This is the very, very technical Off the Lip show with Mr. Gilbert.
That's right,
Mr.
Mr.
Excited to have you
Gilbert.
on the show today.
Thank you very, very much.
How are you doing today? You're looking quite early. You almost look like you've crossed the Atlantic Ocean on a paddleboard.
I look like you, don't I?
Only 3 days was it?
I look like you in Antigua when you finished in Antigua,
That's true.
right? A little hairy.
I might have been a little bit more skinny, but that's only because I like lost half Backstreet Boy on my journey.
Yeah, you looked a little skinny that day. You looked a little skinny that day. What was the first thing you ate after that? After 93 days alone on the Atlantic Ocean, what was the first thing that you like? What was the first thing you ate?
A cheeseburger. And then I proceeded to eat a cheeseburger every day for the next 3 months.
Did you really?
Well, I'd lost 20% of my entire body mass, so
Yeah.
it's interesting. Your body just craves protein.
Right.
Once I learned a little bit more that you can actually get those kind of proteins in plant-based stuff, then I started eating a lot more plant-based and pea-based
Right.
proteins. But yeah, interesting that your body always tell you what you need, but
Right.
we often either don't listen or we think that we know better.
Right. Now this show today, I want to talk about with him and you've been doing a lot of Facebook videos in regards to what you went through, and coupled with what people are going through with today's pandemic and situation that people are stuck, you know, having to stay at home. And that's is this part of the 10 tools for isolation lockdown success?
Yeah, so what I realized when we started going into this pandemic, I think that, you know, a lot of people aren't used to change. They aren't used to being isolated. They aren't used to being closed up in small spaces for long periods of time. The change of having to work suddenly from home, having work and life and everything else immersed into one, and the change and the adversity that we're dealing with, and with no sort of set time frame of how it's gonna go back to any sort of form of normality. And
Right.
I just realized that through a lot of the stuff that I've done in my life, whether it be dealing with fear and overcoming adversity and changing big wave surfing, or whether we're stuck in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for 93 days in a coffin-sized box that I wasn't even as long as I was to be able to sleep in, and dealing with change and adversity all the time, I was pretty much dealing with exactly the same thing, just on a more dramatic level in the ocean. So
Right.
I thought I could maybe develop some tools that will help people get through it, and that's what I started to do.
Can you talk about those tools? Because we were asked to stay inside, we were asked to stay put, right, in our houses, and no one was used to that. There was no instructions, there was no, you just had to do it. And perhaps you could, you know, help people, especially now, we're in like a second or third month of people getting stuck inside. Yes, we can exercise a little bit, but what can you help or say to help people that are inside and not used to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I learned from that journey was that, you know, a lot of the tools that I sort of taken for granted that I've learned over my journey that seem normal and natural to me seem like they're very unique. And even though a lot of them are sort of common sense often isn't common until you have someone actually just tell you about it, and then suddenly you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But if you implement them all, and then you build them into your structure and your routine, then it makes a dramatic impact on what you do. And a lot of things you might take for granted, like doing exercise. I didn't have to think about it because if I didn't do exercise, I wasn't going to get across the Atlantic. I was having to paddle like 12 to 15 hours a day, and that's not what I'm advising for people, but it just is one of those tools to be able to stay positive through change and adversity. And I think that's what seemed to be the most common thread is how to stay positive and productive through it all.
How did you, when you're paddling 10 to 15 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get through the point where you're like, I don't, like the 8th hour, I can't paddle anymore, I'm done. I had enough, I can't do it anymore today, I can't make that 10th hour or 15th hour. How did you cross that threshold of keeping going? Especially when you've got no motivation, you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're in the middle of nowhere by yourself. How did you manage to kick your own ass to keep going, as it were?
Well, I think that's probably the first most critical aspect of it, which you said is, if you don't have motivation, you're not going to go anywhere, and then you might as well not start. Because if you're not motivated by a purpose greater than yourself, then you're not going to be able to get through any difficult and challenging time. And I believe you always need to have a North Star. Like everybody's got to have either a purpose or something that makes them inspired and makes them passionate to get up each day. And if you don't have that, then that's where you're gonna struggle. So for some people that might be their kids, it might be a job that they're super passionate about, it might be a purpose greater than themselves to be able to give back to a charity or whatever. Like I'm very fortunate that I have multiple different charities that I'm very passionate about, that I was doing it for, to be able to pay for operations to change little kids' lives and pay for food or all those kind of things, and I was doing it for like multiple different reasons. So I had a very strong purpose and goal-oriented background that I could always tap into that would keep me inspired to keep on going. And I think that's absolutely essential from every different aspect, is to have your North Star and have something that keeps you inspired. Like, why do you get up in the morning? Like, what drives you? What keeps you going? Like, if you hate what you do, you hate your life, you hate your job, you hate your relationship, it's like you need to make some serious changes. And a lot of people, they'd rather be uncomfortable and in a place that they really don't like than lean into change.
But they're used to it. That's what they're used to.
Yeah, well, the routine is good, but it's only good if it's positive routine that has a positive impact on your life and on others. So if you're fearful of something like the greatest challenge for most people is change. People don't like change, but most people don't realize that the only constant in life is change. So if you're not able to lean into change and realize that that's the only time when you grow as a human. So if you're not growing and you're not leaning into change constantly, then you're not evolving as a human being, and you're going backwards. And we all want to progress in life. I mean, I don't know anyone that doesn't, but we as human beings are hardwired to sort of steer away from change, that's where your growth happens. That's where the magic happens. That's where your greatest potential lies, is beyond your fears and your comfort zone. And that's
how can you help somebody who maybe they're in an apartment by themselves, they're alone, they're stuck inside, and needing help, needing some advice? How can you help that person that is alone, basically coupled with like in sync or with what you had going on, crossing the Atlantic alone and by yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody. So I think the 10 tools that like sort of happened more by chance than by choice. It was more designed to help people just randomly, and then it's also just become a talk that I now do for big businesses all over the world. But I think what's important about it is it makes people realize that it's all about how to stay positive through this change and challenge. And the keys to trying to stay positive when you are in isolation and you're by yourself is to not go into a negative space. And a lot of people don't realize that when they go into a negative space, they can pull themselves out. But how do you do that when you're alone and you don't have connection? So I always say the most valuable tool for me, and I go through this as well, I use gratitude as one of the most powerful grounding tools that brings you back into a more positive space. So when I talk about gratitude, people are like, oh, what do you mean talk about gratitude? Attitude of gratitude is a great example, okay? So it's all about reminding yourself all the things you do have, and not take for granted all the things you don't have. So anytime you get into a negative space, just ask yourself like a couple of really important questions, which are, what should I be thankful for today and why? Like, how fortunate am I? And there's a great little saying called "As the World Turns" that summarizes really nicely, and it says, if you go to bed at night with a roof over your head, and you have your health, and you have your well-being, and you have other people around you, whether it be in your house or that you know that love you, and you wake up in the morning and you can get out of bed, and you have arms and legs at work, and you go downstairs and you open the fridge and there's food, and you eat something out of the food, and then you get onto one of your devices, whether it be a computer or your phone, that's communication. And then you walk to outside your house and you get into a car and a bike, which is transport. And then you go to your work or whatever, you get on your device and you're speaking to someone, that's work, which brings in money. And if you have a little bit of spare change in your pocket, that's extra capital, which most people don't have. And if you can do that and you've never been in famine, you've never been in war, and you have food, you are more well off than 94% of the people on the planet today. And if that isn't enough to be able to bring you into a sense of being, immense sense of gratitude, then there's really no hope for you.
Right.
Like, so you've just got to remind yourself that you are very fortunate. Just to be able to wake up with arms and legs and everything that works, and have a roof over your head is a blessing, and that should put you back into a positive space. And then it's a combination of like multiple other things, which are, you know, you can either be a, you know, it's all about mindset. So then there's a mindset and attitude, which is, do you have like a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Like are you a pessimist or an optimist? And none of those things are by chance. They're by choice, practice, and consistency.
Right.
And most people think, oh, if someone's really positive, they think, oh, well, they just were born that way. They were never born that way.
Right.
That was by choice and by practice and consistency. And when you know that there's so much negativity in the world, why on earth would you ever wake up and think to yourself, well, you know, that you're going to be negative towards any situation? So anytime you react to something, you have the ability to be able to catch yourself and respond in whatever manner you decide. Why on earth would you ever choose to see anything negatively when you know the results and the outcome and the actions that come from that are going to be negative if you respond in that manner?
Do you read the news?
No, not really much, no.
No. You watch the news on the internet or follow what's going on?
I follow it very, very briefly, and
Right.
I choose to decide what I allow in.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the other tools that we talk about is letting go of what I call the neg, and the neg is the negative. So
Right.
we all have the ability to also choose, manage, minimize, and mitigate the amount of negativity we allow into our world, because whatever we allow into our thoughts become like a seed, and it grows and it
Right.
manifests. So you should be choosing not only the news that you look at, the people you speak to, the people you allow into your space, into your world, and into your thoughts. And that's incredible. And most people don't think like that. Like, why on earth would you surround yourself with negative things, negative media, negative people? Because you are a reflection of the company you keep, and the company you keep, and the thoughts and the stimuli that comes in affects your mental state.
Right.
So
I'd like to go a different direction
Sure.
a little bit. When you were first on my show, I don't know, it was maybe 5 years ago, I think probably one of the best stories of, I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people, talked to a lot of people, and everyone's wonderful except one lunatic. The story of how that whole story of being in South Africa with like 25 bucks in your pocket, and how you won Mavericks is you should either read about it in your book. You're Stoked, right? The book Stoked. You should go back and listen to Off That Radio Show podcast, because I never forget TC, who's my co-host. TC can talk, but just to have TC not to talk and to listen about that. When you told that story, we were both with our mouths just like a jar going, "Oh my God, how did it happen? How did you do that?" That story of how you from the $25 in your pocket in South Africa to winning that contest is truly remarkable.
Well, I think it wasn't even like I had $25.
Was it 20? Was it less?
It wasn't even that. Like, I was overdrawn on every single one of my cards, every single one of my bank accounts to like the limit of what it could be, and then I had 25 bucks, but that was all that I had. And I borrowed money at the airport from multiple different people and friends and brothers to be able to pay for the ticket.
I wouldn't want to get any money. I want to get it back.
Yeah, and I just, I find it like that amazing. And I think a lot of people see signs like when there are roadblocks in their path or their challenges that they face with, they see that as signs to not continue. And I I try and flip everything onto its head and turn a positive into a negative into a positive. So every single thing, like some people see fear or change as a roadblock to not proceed forward because it puts you into paralyzed state, or as a sign that I shouldn't move forward. I just see those as that are put in your way as a test to see how badly you want something. How bad is your resolve in order to still move forward? And it's just a matter of, like, I believe that the world is there to test you and to test your resolve to see that you're going to prove how badly you want it over and above what everyone else would go to, the lengths that you would go to.
When you flew all the way, all different Amsterdam and to Dallas and all.
Well, I didn't even know the event was on when I got on that flight. So
right, but did you think did you during those flights, or even maybe at Amsterdam airport, yelling at some poor airport attendant to get you on the plane? Did you think about, what the hell am I doing? I may just catch one wave, or I may just make the first heat, or did you always think that when you got there you're gonna have a chance at winning it?
Well, I think that's a great question, but I think it even goes deeper than that, because I remember flying out. So when I finally got to pay for the ticket while I was standing at the airport.
How did you pay for that ticket?
Through my one brother and two of my friends that I combined on the phone, 3 of them to put money like directly into one bank account to be able to pay for the ticket within an hour and a half while I was standing there when there was only one seat left on the flight that I could possibly get, and the flight was closing, and it all needed to happen like within an hour. And I didn't even know if the event was going to run. So I got on the flight without knowing the event was going to run, because they were late in making the call, but that was the only flight that was going to get me there in time before the event was going to run if I left right in that moment. And I still didn't know if the event was on. So it was like I was borrowing more money. I was up to my heels in debt. And when I was flying over between Cape Town and Amsterdam in that first or the second leg, I realized in that moment that if I arrived in Amsterdam and found out that they called the event off and it wasn't going to run, I didn't even have enough money in my $25 to change my ticket to fly home. Like that's, and I guess that's for me is a great example of what I call all in. And people use the term all in very loosely. People have no idea what all in really means. And I know because I've done this multiple times. And the reason why I'm so passionate about that concept is because it's a very powerful state. It's called a monk state, which is a makrish state, which means that you give up everything that you believe in, like everything that for your life of what you believe in.
Yeah.
And when you are in that space, it puts you in a very powerful space to be able to go forward, because you know that you've got nowhere else to go, and there's no turning back. There's no exit strategy. Like you go forward and you make it work, otherwise you lose everything.
Get to the airport in San Francisco. Jeff Clark picks you up. You got no wet. Your wetsuit doesn't arrive. Your boards don't arrive.
Yeah.
That journey from San Francisco Airport to Half Moon Bay. You're exhausted. Eating no food. Right. No sleep. No food.
Literally had like the shirt on my back. I was still in flip flops. No clothes. Nothing.
He tells you what event's on.
Event's on. And
what did you
starting
think?
in like 3 hours time. I have no equipment, no board.
Did you know that you had to do well in the contest in order to make some money to get home? Was that something you thought about?
Yeah, I had to progress, past. For me, everything's about so again, some of the stuff I talk about in the talks that I do is it's about breaking things down into bite-sized chunks that don't seem overwhelming for your mental state to be able to comprehend. So you break things down just to compartmentalize it, and you just focus on what's in front of you.
Is your mind
compartmentalized?
Yeah, is your mind like that? It's like you're having a conversation with Jeff Clark over here, but in your mind's working its own little session, going, I need to get there, I'm going to go surf, I'm going to paddle, and what happens inside Chris Bertish.
Yeah, it's like goal number 1, which felt like the Amazing Race. Getting to America before the event was going to run. Finding out that the event was on once I got onto the second flight. Okay, you've on the flight, which is going to get you there. There are 4 connections. You have to make every single one of those connections, otherwise you miss the event. If the event is going to be on, arrive in Amsterdam. Okay, while I was in the air, they called the event on. Okay, check box 1,
right.
Done. Okay, now I need to make every single one of those connections. Nearly missed the 3rd connection because Dallas was getting hit by the storm. They was getting hit on the west coast, which they were closing down the airport, and a lot of flights are getting cancelled.
Right.
Get through that, which was a part of, like, incredible part of that story, as you know, which people can read about in the book and the film and stuff. But then check that box 2. Get to San Francisco. Check box 3. 3 o'clock in the morning. Finding out none of my equipment, my hand luggage, my boards, my wetsuits, my everything didn't arrive. Okay, back, you know, going backwards again. So now like another obstacle. You feel like you're going backwards. Okay, then you like get someone to pick you up, like at the airport, and get you there. Get to Jeff's house. Figure out, okay, equipment. Get equipment. Borrow some stuff from Jeff. Make that all happen. And then literally try and get some sleep. Hour and a half sleep. Check. Okay, go down to the beach. Get into the first heat. Get into the first heat. Check. Put the vest over my head, and wow, I'm in the Mavericks events. I've been dreaming of this. I've been working
How'd that feel?
For 10 years. I've been working, and when I put that like vest on in the water, it was like this massive relief. But it was almost like I'd won the event before I'd even begun. Like just getting to that point of sitting in the water and putting a vest on borrowed equipment after traveling for 42 hours in the biggest waves in the history of the sport at that time was just, like that was just, I felt like I had won already.
Had you trained for that? Had you trained for the event?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you know me well. That's
Right.
a rhetorical question. So
Right.
like, yeah.
But when you got the wetsuit, once you, I mean, that training you had, you're exhausted, right?
Yeah. So I think.
So did you dig somewhere inside Chris Bertish that has never been dug, that had never been found before? Did something come out of you that like, man, this is my 6th gear.
So I love that question for multiple different reasons, because I always believe that you've got to dig really deep to be able to do things that normally you wouldn't ever be able to achieve. And sometimes in life you only might get one opportunity, and as a South African coming from my environment and no sponsorship and everything on the line for what you believe in, that's when like you kick into the underdog, and like you've put everything on the line to be able to make it happen. So you've got to make it happen no matter what, and no matter what happens, like this is your only one chance. So it's like nothing's on a golden platter. You make it work, and you do the best you can, and you dig like as deeper than you've ever dug before to be able to make it happen, because that's your first and only and probably last chance you're going to get to make it happen. Over and above that, then you go into the background of it, and you think, okay, well, are you fit and are you ready? Well, I've been training for 10 years for that wave. Like I hadn't gone to Hawaii, which was easier, and try to get into the eddy, because I believe that was the Mavericks event was where you really got chosen on your credentials by proving yourself year in, year out, and going deeper, harder, and later than anyone else to be able to make that cut. And then over and above that, I surfed and trained Mavericks in every type of condition, the worst possible conditions that you can surf Mavericks. I used to surf with rainy, stormy, cloudy, misty, by myself, onshore, offshore, on all different types of equipment, and I'd used a lot of Jeff's boards, Jeff's shapes. So even though I wasn't using my board, I was using one of his templates, which was one of my templates. So even though I hadn't used that board, I was more familiar with very difficult, challenging conditions out of Mavericks than I believe any other surfer in that event, because I trained for worst case scenario in every single difficult, challenging environment. And I think that's what really people don't get, is that the amount of planning and preparation that goes into pre-event over the years before, so that when the conditions are difficult and challenging, and most guys go out and surf big waves, that are really good big wave riders, they go and surf when the conditions are good, and only when the conditions are good. Right. So when it's challenging, you're ready for it, you know?
So that first wave that you caught, I mean, had you seen it that big out there previously?
No.
And that first wave you caught, you fell.
So 2010 was sort of, still to this day, it's one of the biggest days in competitive surfing paddling history. And it was an anomaly day. Like no one had ever seen waves that big and paddle surf in that environment. And this was pre-vest, so this was the year before. Before the vest. Actually, it wasn't the year before. This was the year that the vest got invented, because of the day after when Shane Dorian nearly drowned. And that's when the inflation vest. So this was pre-vest. So everybody was super, like, I believe in making sure that you are super fit. So I like to develop my own training regime which got me to a state which I almost felt like I was invincible. And at that time in 2010, I don't think there was anyone else that was doing the kind of training that I was doing to be ready, because I believe that physical fitness breeds mental confidence. I think the only person that was probably in that physical state was Mark Healy, because he's one of the top free divers in the world, and that's what he does when he spears. So, but I developed that routine and that 6-month program for myself, which mimicked worst case scenarios, and I was ready for that day. And in that first 15 minutes of the heat, we got caught inside by probably the biggest wave I've still ever seen land in front of me, and we.
How big was it?
60 feet plus.
Right.
And that dragged me, almost a mile underneath the water, and I came so close to drowning that I sort of almost blacked out and lost the ability to be able to use my arms and legs and even the ability to be able to speak. So it was.
When you were picked up by that,
bad day at the office.
It was a bad day at the office. Now the bad day at the office, Tony, was the jet ski driver. Did he want to take you back to the boat?
Yeah, the emergency. Yeah.
Right, but you decided I need to go back. But you had no life in your limbs.
No, it was
Barely you barely speak, right?
Yeah.
So what made you want to go back out there?
Well,
What went off in that? What went off in your mind? Like, was it the fact? Was it monetary?
No.
Was not monetary? Like, I need to make some money to get back home, or
no, it's never about that. It's just like it's about looking at every situation and looking back and saying, okay, if I give up now, if I look back in 10 years' time, will I regret the decision that I make now? And I try and look at every single decision that I make in that way.
Is that what went through your mind at that moment? Like,
yeah, and I realized I had nothing left, and if I got caught again, there's no way I'd survive. However, what I did think is that I looked at my watch and there was still 15 minutes left in the heat, and 20 minutes left in the heat, and I was like, you know what, if I lie here for 5 minutes and just recoup my energy, maybe after the end of that 5 minutes, maybe I'll be able to rethink that I can possibly continue on. And then I don't focus on winning the heat, just focus on surviving the heat and getting one more wave to be able to get me through. Because I know only one other person in the heat had got a wave at that point, and I got a smaller one, and I knew that all I needed was one more wave and I could get through. But at that stage, I didn't feel like I could continue on and I should be going to the boat. But don't make your decisions hastily in the moment. And the key lesson from that is that, and you can apply this at any time in life, and it's often when we get angry and we respond out of anger, just stop and breathe, take a space before you make your decision. And the longer you take to respond and make a decision, often the better the decision you make, because you assimilate all the right information,
right.
You process it, and you make the right decision, not out of emotion or out of fear or out of anger or out of lack or whatever it is,
right.
And you end up making a better decision. And if I'd have made that decision right then and there when I got dropped off, my obvious decision, like any other normal human being, would have been to get on the boat and call it quits.
Right.
But once you call it quits, then it's very difficult then to reprogram your mental state, and you've told everybody you've given up, and then to change your mind and then to go back into that space.
Right.
Whereas if you pause, reset, break, and rejuve, then you can possibly make a better decision, and that's pretty much what happened. And then it wasn't about catching more waves, really. The objective was, when I was lying after 5 minutes, it's like, okay, I'm going to just paddle back out. I'm not going to go and sit where everyone else is sitting. All I want to do is, by the end of the heat, I want to paddle back out and get to the back line so I can never look back in 10 years and say I never tried. That was the goal. So I break everything down to little bite-sized chunks. Instead of going, I'm going to go...
You're still checking boxes.
Still checking boxes,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, I'm not going to... that's not my goal. But it's just breaking it down into bite-sized chunks that my mind can compartmentalize and go, I can do that. And then it was just really about, it doesn't matter how long it's going to take me to get back. I'm just going to focus on, just take that first stroke. Take that first stroke. Okay, I can take another stroke. And then you get to your back line, you're like, okay, now I'm here, check off the next one. Okay, let me sit here for another 5 minutes. Okay, there's 5 minutes left in the heat. Okay, I don't think another wave is going to come, but at least I've got out here and I can never look back and say I never tried. Box checked. Okay, then by random, when you say chance or destiny or whatever, if you fate or whatever you want to call it, but you've now done everything in your power to be able to put yourself in a space where fate or destiny or the universe can gift you an opportunity. But if you never get to that point, that opportunity will never arise if you
Right.
don't push through enough adversity.
Don't check the boxes. You're never going to get there.
So yeah, got to that point, and then there was a last set that came in, and I was in completely the wrong place. I was almost in the channel because was too scared to be in that zone because I knew I'd die. And then the last set came in. One guy got one of the waves. I think Casey got one wave. The two other waves went through, and the last wave of the set came at like 30 degrees, different direction, random chance, and came directly at me. And I ended up thinking, well, there's no way I can catch it. I don't even have enough strength to paddle for it. And I ended up flopping down and taking one stroke. And it's the only wave in 20 years of big wave surfing that I've ever caught just with one double stroke.
The grandma.
Like what are the chances of that happening?
Right.
Yeah.
And you're going to win the contest.
Yeah, and then it was just like, so I got that last wave, and for me it wasn't about winning the heat. It was just like, wow, I caught the wave, that's amazing, and I survived. And as I pulled off the wave, the hooter went for the end of the heat. And I was just happy. I think I was like, putting my hands above my head because I was celebrating, and that was just about getting through. That was just one. You know, and then I found out that I actually got through the heat. And then it was how to reprogram and reset your mental state to how you just focus on getting through one heat at a time.
The rest of it must have been gravy for you, right? Almost.
Not at all. Like everything was just about like one step at a time.
Right.
So it was like, get through the next heat. Okay, got through to the next heat, then got to the semis. Then I was like, okay, how do I separate myself from everyone else in the semis? See if I can put into a barrel. Pull into a barrel, don't come out, but get scored really high in the semis by pulling into a barrel. I've always wanted to do that. It's one of the things I've always wanted to do in one of the big wave events. Check that box off. That got me, by doing that, got me into the final. Got into the final, okay. Objective of the final, because the waves got like even bigger. Now they were like the biggest waves that everyone had ever seen, and the now had gone slightly onshore, bumpy. So I was actually quite used to those conditions from training in that kind of environment, except it was just bigger. And then my objective and my goal for the final was just get 2 waves, don't die. And that was it. That was like, and I pulled out of one, which thank God I didn't. I got halfway down and then I pulled off the side, and if I had committed to that, I would have been in serious trouble. So yeah, and then the last 5 minutes of the heat, I got like that one wave where I just hung on and basically made the airdrop part of it, and that ended up being the wave that won the Navex Big Wave Invitational title.
Congratulations.
Borrowed boards and traveled 42 hours and the biggest.
That's an amazing story. But then, then I'm gonna go forward a few years.
Yeah.
You decide that you want to. How soon after, for someone like you who's always got goals ahead of you, how soon after that you won Mavericks in 2010 did you start thinking about what your next goal might want to be on the ocean?
Quite a while, because I was at that time, I think in 2000 and the following year, I was competing on the Big Wave World Tour at the same time as I was also competing on the stand-up paddleboard surfing world tour. So I was actually doing 2 world tours across 2 different sports at the same time, which was reasonably challenging, and I was juggling a full-time job at the same time. So yeah, and no real sponsorship either. So it's pretty interesting.
When did it come to your mind? When did it come to your mind that you know what, I'm going to cross the Atlantic Ocean on a stand-up paddle? When was that first inkling or seed sown that I'm going to go? This is something I'm going to challenge myself to do.
It was a long time after that. So I got heavily into stand-up paddleboarding side. I was more on the surf side on stand-up paddleboarding, and then after about 3 years of that, sort of making sort of top 10. Then I started getting into the distance stuff and doing the long distance and then the downwind stuff, and then I started doing the distance records, and then I started doing 12-hour record, 12-hour world record, Guinness World Record, then the 24-hour. As soon as I started getting into the 24-hour and then the 5-day, 7-day, and I think that's what most people miss. They're like, oh, when did you just think of doing the transatlantic? People
graduated over time.
Yeah. So everything for me, everything that I do in the way I operate is all about stepping stones. Everything is just like a stepping stone to the next thing, and then the next thing. And a lot of people, it's the same as people like look at people that surf giant waves, and they go, oh, jeez, the guy's crazy. How do you do that? That's nuts. But all it is stepping stones.
Right.
He didn't start surfing giant waves. He started in the same waves at Cowles or some little 1-foot wave, probably getting pushed in by his dad or a friend or
It's
family,
not,
like everyone else.
right,
Some people just decided, like we're talking about dealing with change and pushing your comfort zone and fear, some people just became happy and comfortable surfing 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 foot waves, and they stayed there. And because they didn't push past their fear and their comfort zone, they stayed in that place, and they never progressed. The only difference between those people and the guys that are surfing those giant waves, and people are like, that's crazy, is that they kept on pushing their comfort zone, and they kept on leaning into fear and change.
right.
And that's exactly where we're at. And I did those 12-hour, 24-hour records, then I did a 7-day, 350K, which is about 220 miles, completely unsupported, unassisted. And I'd started adding the charities that I was very passionate about to be able to raise money for these charities. And that's when the sort of everything started shifting for me, when I started being able to use what I do to positively make impact on other people's lives. And I think that's when you start unlocking something that's bigger than yourself, that helps using what you do, your passions, for positive good and change.
Right. Now people can read about your crossing of the Atlantic. I mean, we don't have enough time to go talk about the 93 days. But the top three things that you learned on that trip, solo, unassisted, cross Atlantic, no one around you, no assist, no help, no nothing. What were the top three things that you learned and took away from that journey?
Have a purpose greater than yourself. Have your guide, like, make sure you have in life a guiding star. Like, have something that you're lean into. So anytime things get difficult and things get challenging, have something that inspires you, motivates you, and keeps you going through difficult and challenging times. That's definitely number one. Then to stay positive in life, in anything you do, and this applies to people that have mild depression, the people that are just going through challenge and change in whatever capacity format, whether it be now, whether it be the pandemic, whether it be in life, we all go through difficult and challenging times, is make sure you include nature, exercise, and nutrition and recovery. Those 4 things are absolutely essential, and I go through in detail into how that impacts on your mental state, your physical state, your immune system, your psychology, and how it's absolutely essential to include those into your life plan each and every day, and build that into your routine and schedule.
Right.
And then also, like, break things down into bite-sized chunks. Everything that seems overwhelming and challenging, if you break it down into little bite-sized chunks, you can make it more manageable for your mind to comprehend.
That's scary.
For you to be able to go, I can do that. I can get through this day. I can get through. But if you're thinking like, oh my God, I don't have enough money to be able, how am I going to get through the pandemic? I've lost my job. Break it down into bite-sized chunks. Just break it in like, I'm just going to focus on getting through the next day. Then I'm going to focus on getting through the next week. Then I'm going to focus on but just focus on what's in front of you. And when you break it down into that, then it's doable. When you look at sometimes like that insurmountable challenge and goal that's like seems so overwhelming, it paralyzes you into fear and inaction and not going forward. But you've got to keep on progressing and just stop. Like, write 4 things down on a piece of paper. I'm going to do this today, and tick them off.
Right.
One by, but you've got to start.
Right.
Starting is one of the most empowering things, because if you don't, you're just overwhelmed, you're just paralyzed by fear, you don't move forward. So you're actually going backwards. So there's an amazing thing called the power of the start, which is when you just start, you build momentum, you build a foundation to be able to build off. You can improve on that, and you empower yourself to know that you've achieved that.
Right.
Even if it's these little things, you're ticking them off like little goals, and you're ticking your boxes. You're like, okay, I'm making progress. And then remind yourself at the end of that time, remind yourself where you came from,
Right.
and where you are now, and where you wanted to go. Because sometimes then you look back and you're like, I made a lot of progress here, and that's empowering in itself. It gives you more confidence to keep on moving forward.
Can we talk about your dad?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Let's talk about your dad. Your dad was a remarkable person too, was a remarkable waterman. Along with your brothers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about your dad a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
You want to talk about your dad? Your dad was going to be, wasn't your dad going to be, wasn't he Olympian or was he?
No, he was a Springbok water skier.
Right.
And he was also the first guy that, he built the first sailing catamaran in South Africa called the Thai 4. And I was sailing on that with him from the age of like 4 years old. So yeah, I've been sailing from a really early age and being in the ocean. I think I started water skiing on little handcrafted little water skis that he shaped out of wood, because they were too small. There weren't skis that existed. They were small enough for me learning to ski at like the age of 4 years old or
Right.
something. So yeah, I was very in tune with the ocean from a very early age, and he taught me an immense sense of respect and understanding for the ocean, which I carry through into everything that I do, and the conservation, education, and sustainability side that I do in my foundation as well.
Right. So this gentleman's name is Chris Bertish, and he's always a fascinating talk. But we need to remember, ladies and gentlemen listening out there, he's a fantastic speaker. So if you need any motivation, check out Chris Bertish. Is there a website that you have?
ChrisBertish.com, and then my foundation is the Chris Bertish Foundation, which is also just to inspire, encourage confidence and self-belief in the youth through education, conservation, and sustainability.
So if you're stuck, you want to get started, and you don't know how to start, go back and listen to this interview, and Chris in the nicest possible way, because he's the nicest possible person you can talk to. He will show you. I mean, for some of us, sometimes I get stuck where you don't want to start. You go, no, I'm just going to stay right here. And so listening to him today, it helps me, and I hope it helps a lot of other people. And I don't know what's next for you, but you have a great deal of support, whether it be in Half Moon Bay or being Pacific Grove or being obviously a Springbok. Anybody knows what a Springbok is? It's South African, and he's just a gentleman, and he's a scholar, and it's truly for me an honor to be in the same room with him, as always.
Thanks, Neil. I really appreciate it. Neil's always been an amazing support of me and everything that I've done in the last 20 years. It's been.
I tried to tell you not to paddle across the Atlantic, but that didn't do very well.
Yeah, with the flights.
I'll never forget that. I just got another thing on my phone recording it. What the hell are you doing? No!
Yeah, well, the
And you think, what?
flights are getting too expensive.
I remember when I hung up the phone and I go, that may be the last time I ever talked to that guy. It's truly what I knew exactly where I was. I was in Santa Cruz Waves office in Pleasure Point going, and on the phone with you, and the phone call was over, and that may be the last time I ever talked to that man. But no. He did it. And,
no, I think sometimes you just, and I think it's just a great key for life. I think sometimes you just know something.
Right.
You just know you can do something, no matter what anyone tells. And I think that's something that I've always believed in, is don't listen to anyone else. If you believe something, don't doubt yourself. Just believe in the heart and heart that you do it, and just start. Take daily steps and actions towards it. Believe in yourself. Tackle a passion which you have, which is greater than yourself, and use that as motivation to be able to keep going and get through any challenge and change. And if you do that, and you stay focused and determined and resilient, you can get through anything, even what other people believe is impossible.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks
Chris.
very much.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. And that was the
Appreciate
interview. There'll be more shows coming up, but none more important than this one right here. So thanks, Chris, for doing it.
Legend.
Thanks, buddy.
This is called social distancing.
This is that's right.